Welcome to Livzenastrology, the channel for updates and reflections, where we are grounded in the stars and elevated by consciousness. Thank you for tuning in. And family, hello. Welcome to the Livzenastrology Podcast. My name is Carrie. I'm the host of this podcast series. And today I am so honored to welcome onto the platform Carrie Trubenbach, who is a 40 plus year spiritual psychotherapist. And she's come on the stage today and on this platform today as we were speaking. We were friends. We've been friends for quite a while now. And this is such an important topic that we're getting ready to dive into today on how to die without dying. And coming from a very raw and vulnerable space from both of us, as we are both processing the energies during the Scorpio time, right? And in astrology, we know that Scorpio season is all about the death and transformation process. So, Carrie, I want to welcome you to this platform. Thank you for this conversation. Thank you for being here.
And thank you for having me. Yes, thank you so much for having me. It's an honor. It's an honor, privilege, and it's exciting. I love seeing you and doing this with you.
Yeah, I honor the conversation that's about to take place, because I feel like right now there is a collective energy happening that we can all feel. And I know you being a psychotherapist and having clients and talking about the energies that are playing themselves out right now, not just on the collective level, but in our own individuated lives, how we're seeing this energy play out. I wanted to give you the platform to talk about this ego death process. To how can parts of us die without actually having to die in the physical? And I know that you, because you've been doing this for so long, have worked with thousands of people in this process. So I kind of want to go into a little bit of your story and just what you're feeling right now as a collective energy. You know, what are you seeing right now happening in this process?
Yeah. Well, what's interesting is that I'm seeing everyone. There's not one person that I know, either as a client, friend, family, that isn't going through just a very challenging time, almost like some people that are more kinesthetic would say, it's kind of like walking through gel instead of oxygen or air. It just feels the density, the thickness. And I think in preparation for the change that's happening, anything that is not of the light, which means our shadow, is just, it's gonna come up. And it needs to come up in order. It's a purification process is what I see it as. We're actually purging. So if you can purge those areas of yourself that you feel ashamed of, you feel guilty of, you don't feel good about, and you can, but when I say release them, releasing them with love. Even when you don't feel it, because you're not going to feel love toward the parts of you that you have strong feelings about, that you've labeled as negative. That's why it's so important. The only way to really get through this process is to establish a more neutral position on all feelings, on everything that's happening, being more of an observer and seeing your identity as being something that has been created, and you were part of the one that created that, for sure, and your parents and the society and the collective and everything created this persona, this identity. And when I'm attached to that identity and I've forgotten who I truly am in spirit, I suffer because I'm taking it on as in human form. I'm taking it on with the ego, which usually brings up judgment. The ego is responsible for the judgment. And as long as we carry around judgment, guess where that judgment's going to be pointed? It's going to be pointed at ourselves first. And then it just naturally, bounces off us onto other people. So the only way through this process, and first it's acknowledging that you're not alone. You're not alone in this process, and it feels like you are. For me, I even felt abandoned, betrayed by the universe, because I thought, I'm doing all the right things. I listened to my inner self, and I blah, 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 blah. And now, what's happening is that old paradigm of victim, perpetrator, and hero is so imprinted in our psyche. Every single movie you've ever watched has that triad, right? It's really a triangle. It's very interesting. It's a triune. It's the hero, perpetrator, victim. Now, anytime you feel like a victim, you're back in it. Anytime you feel like you have to rescue somebody or be a hero, you're back into it. Every time you feel like you're so upset and angry and you become bullish or aggressive in anger and frustration, you're back in it. And the only way through that I know of is through compassion. Through practicing compassion, being conscious of the role that you're playing, or the roles. Because if you play one of those roles, you're playing the other roles too. We just switch them around. It's not like you're always a victim. If you're not a victim and you feel like a victim, you'll probably turn into a perpetrator, or you're going to want to rescue people that are victims because you feel for them. So it's a constant paradigm we're sucked into. And the only way I know through it is to have compassion for all three roles and just become more neutral to what's going on, so that you might feel like a victim, but our feelings are not who we are. You might think thoughts like a victim, perpetrator, or hero, but we are not our thoughts. So if we're not our thoughts and we're not our feelings, and if we're just pure energy and consciousness is pure energy, then when we're suffering, it could only be our ego. It could only be from the feelings and the thoughts that we have identified as ourselves, when in truth they're not, but boy, they sure feel like it. And I just want to say to everybody, this is so important, because when we're struggling like this, there is a light at the end of the tunnel. I choose to believe that. I've heard that from trustworthy sources, that there is a light at the end of the tunnel, and that what we're experiencing is the result of the darkness fleeing from the light, and it has to come up and it has to be purged. That's what makes sense to me, because a lot of times the energy I'm feeling in my body isn't even coming from me. It feels like, all we have to do, actually, don't do it. Don't turn on the news. But if you want to experience a little bit of the collective pain, turn on the news. I don't watch the news anymore, and I still feel it. An empath will feel it from neighbors, from the energy in their community, so I've started to realize I really do have to start to just put a white light around me whenever I'm going out, and it helps, because what we need the most is people need to be able to purge their pain. And it's really hard to listen to the negativity if you're not at peace with your own pain. You're going to want to run from anybody who has pain. And so people are running from each other because they can't handle their pain and they can't handle anybody else's. But if we could just listen long enough to each other, and when the person finishes all their victimization, and almost all negativity comes from that old paradigm that I just talked about. All my suffering is when I feel victimized, when I feel betrayed, when I feel abandoned by the universe, by friends, by myself, most of all, by myself. Oh, that hurts. that hurts so much. And then I have to forgive. And I have to realize this is part of the process, because remember, this isn't really who we truly are. And I also want to say that for a long time, I wanted to get rid of my ego. Not only do I think it's not even possible, I don't think that's the approach that's going to give me the long-lasting peace and joy and love that I'm seeking, and that I know anybody who's drawn to this channel and are divinely called to listen are going to want for themselves as well. Finding that place means that we have to actually even embrace our ego, but not embrace it as the truth, but embrace that there has been a divine purpose, because all divinity has purpose. And we came here as humans to create an identity that doesn't even really exist. But we came to create that. We knew that we were going to create that. And think about it, if you're just pure energy, it must be fun if you're pure energy and not in the physicality, to kind of look down. I imagine, look down and see the people playing in physical form, and they're not feeling the pain or the suffering or the hard part of it. But I would imagine it could look like fun, because we forget the pain and we forget the suffering when we're not in it. And we come back and then we go, oh my God, what did I do? Why did I choose this? What was I thinking? I couldn't possibly have chosen this if I were in my right mind. And that's all identity. And it's, I have to trust there's a reason, and most of it's about learning from it. But sometimes, if you're anything like me, you get tired. You go, I just want to break. I don't want to learn anymore. I just want to go home into the arms of love. I just want to go home sometimes. And I know this is the truth. And that's when I am resisting. I'm resisting what's going on in my life. I'm resisting life. I want it on my terms. I want things to be easier. I don't want to struggle so much. And when I do, I've had the old belief that if I'm struggling, I must be doing something wrong. So then I feel guilt and shame. See, the cycle is just amazing. It's so tricky. But it isn't until I realize that's right, I'm not my identity. That's the only thing that sometimes helps. And I feel suddenly a detached kind of like neutrality from the feelings and the pain and the thoughts and the negativity. And then I'm like, oh yeah, that's right. This is the resting place. This is the home, when I'm not absorbed in it, by it, through it, as it. When I finally let it go and realize that is who I'm, my role here and the identity I took on, but that's not who I truly am. It's the only way I get to breathe in this, through this. And sometimes I even get blitzed out on it, I will say, because the continuum, as blitzed out as I can get, that's also probably as depressed or deeply dark I can get, because the continuum always swings. So the only positive thing in that, I mean, not the only, but one of the positive things is, if you're down, as soon as you get through the dark days of the soul, there will be that bliss, but you have to get through that. And I'm doing this podcast because I just want to normalize it. And the only way I can normalize it is, thank goodness, through clients that really open up, are vulnerable, authentic. And we're all going through it in the collective. We're all going through it in the oneness. We're all going through it in the unity. And I just want to somehow Maybe that's the hero in the old paradigm. Actually, it's also me wanting to self-soothe, because I really do want the whole collective to get through this with me, and with me, and really as me, because I'm looking forward to the other side of this. Woo! I'm trying to
Wow.
embrace it, but that's it, embracing it, and then going, oh, I'm exhausted. Please take this. And that's the ride, that's the journey right now. But it's just right now. We got to remember, it's just right now. It's not forever. There is no damnation. There is no hell. There's only light, and we're here because the dark is leaving. But guess what? It's coming up and through. And if we can stay out of judgment, it just helps. It helps. Judgment of self, and therefore judgment of others. Because whenever we're judging other people, we're judging ourselves. That's why judge not, lest ye be judged. Really, it's because in the oneness, it's all the same.
Yes. Actually, that's what this channel really promotes, is that we are all self. That is our maxim, right? That all is self. And I want to go back to when we're feeling the density of it. And you said the way through it is through compassion. When you're dark and in the shit and learning to compost all these densities, how do you access compassion when you're feeling just so disconnected and in this darkened space? How do you access that?
Yeah. Well, sometimes I access it by getting so tired of the pain that I shift. It forces me to shift. I can't tolerate the pain, but I'll tell you the best way I've found that helps, that's compassionate, is when another human being, whether it's myself with another or another human being like you with me, for you have done this for me, is that we need to get it out. We need to talk about it. We need to give it voice and expression. And we need to be heard. And once we're heard, we shift out of it naturally. That's what I've noticed. If somebody just keeps talking, and it's hard to hear because it's not a nice place to be, but if you can detach and just be there as a witness without taking it on for somebody, or without them taking yours on, and just allow them to talk. And then when they're done talking, say, is there any more? Is there anything else? With compassion. Is there anything more? And then they talk more. And then you say, when they stop again, is there anything else you want to add? Because it makes the person realize they're being heard. And the one thing I know about all of us as we were growing up, because of our ancestors, that just the way it was, we weren't heard as children growing up. And I think that's one of the biggest wounds that we have, because in not being heard, we felt worthless. We felt that we weren't worthy of being seen or heard. And yet we grew up from the place of Spock, which was children are to be seen and not heard. That's what our parents learned, and that's what they taught us. Thank goodness I'm seeing a different generation raising their kids differently. That's beautiful to see that. And those of us that were raised in that old paradigm, it's so important to give people the space for their negativity and their voice, to release it. And it's hard to do if you have your own. So you have to wait until you're emptied of your own. Otherwise, you're going to feel like you're just taking on too much, and you're not going to be able to be there for somebody else. We just all need to be there for each other, take turns being there for each other. I really do believe that that's the compassionate way. We teach each other compassion through practicing it with each other. When we can't give it to ourselves. And there are times when we're just too low to give it to ourselves. We're too close to it. We can't see the forest from the trees.
Yes. The image is coming in as you're speaking. I was a bartender for 25 years. So what I'm seeing is the image that's playing in my head is, when somebody drinks too much and they're purging, all you can do is hold back their hair and let them puke it out. Right.
Yeah.
So as we're listening, and all we can do sometimes is just hold our hair back. Well, come on, get it out. Is there any more? Just rub our backs, just let it come on out and make sure it's going in the toilet, right? Make sure there's a space for it to go.
Yeah.
A safe container, a contained container,
Yes.
so that it can compost. So when it all purges out, it comes out with grace and ease, and then you can just flush it and let it remove. And for me, I found that going in nature is one of the greatest spaces, like the giant cosmic toilet, because she doesn't judge. She's like, give it to me. I'll take it. I'll transmute it. I'll use the compost. I'll regrow stuff with it. So I love that to be there for one another when it gets dense. And then how do you take care of yourself, because you've been doing this for 40 plus years? My goodness, I can only imagine the level of density that you've been able to absorb and process. What are your practices? What do you do to help that?
Well, you know what? I think that it's my perception that when it's such an honor when I have a client, they're in such a vulnerable place, because it's not like we've had a society that says, oh, therapy's great, everybody should do it. We've had a society that has shamed people for it. And so when people go into therapy, they are usually going because they've been suffering a long time. They're in crises. That's what gets them there. They don't go there because they think it's a good idea to grow. Not initially. And so when they come, it's such an honor and privilege to share that vulnerable space with someone and to help them or assist them in accepting what's going on and discovering their feelings and how they're connected. And it's such a privilege to walk into somebody's life like that and share that and hold their hand with them as they get through it. I think I'm fortunate and blessed to do the work that I'm doing, because my life is purposeful through other people and walking them with them on their journey until they feel like they're okay, I can walk this myself now. And it never feels like work to me. It feels more like a blessing, especially when I see, I'm, of course, I won't use any names because of confidentiality, but I had a client not too long ago who wasn't able to work. She couldn't function, basically. And to see her go back to work and function and be able to really function and connect with friends and have a full life again. Now that was a combination of things. It was a combination of working with me, and it was also a combination of needing a little help with a very low dose of a medication that helps the neurological system to shift tracks long enough for them to make the changes, just to take the edge off, and then they can be off it. But she was somebody that really worked hard. She wanted more than anything to be a functioning member of society again. And I'm telling you, it just flew. And that was spirit, because all the work I did with her was almost all spiritual. In fact, really good spiritual coaching is good psychology. And good psychology is good spiritual practice. They're one of the same.
Is that what you do to stay centered and grounded? Is that what you do to stay centered and grounded as you're processing energies for the collective? What are your practices that keep you clear? as you're helping others?
I've had a gift of not taking it on. I never take it on. I don't see it as, although I can connect with it. I can connect with every single experience and feeling that any client has ever brought me. And that's because I'm an old soul. I'm actually an ancient one, I've been told. So I easily relate to people. And there is a connection in that. Well, that connection feeds the soul, soul to soul. So my feeding them is feeding me. It's a very powerful connection. It's a sacred relationship. It's shamanic work. But what helps me is that I don't take it on. There have been times where, in very extremely brutally abusive cases, where I've had people tell me after a session that my color was all off. Now, I didn't take it on consciously, but clearly something took it on. And I did feel a little off, but I didn't feel like I took on their deep suffering necessarily. But, I had two channels tell me, your colors, who's are used to seeing me weekly, and it was always after this session with this person, they'd say, your color's off. So it's not that I can't be impacted, but, when you love what you do and it feeds your soul, it's not what people think. It's like, how can you stand listening to people complain all day? I've been asked. I don't see it that way. That's how. I see it as people opening up and putting a trust of their vulnerability with you. And that to me is precious. It's like authenticity meeting authenticity.
Yeah. So when the times when your color did change, I want to go back to this because there's alchemy happening for people that want to hold space for other people, but they also feel like they take on, or they don't know how to not take it personally. When you were discolored after working with really dense energies, what did you do? What are some of your tools and techniques that you've done to shift that energy?
Well, first of all, I didn't claim it. Even though they told me it was there, I said I didn't claim it. It's the work I do is with love. So even if it's off, I go back to praying and I go back to sending love to them. I mean, it's like between sessions, I think, when I think about them, it's sending love. If they come up in my mind, sending them love. The main thing is for me to remember to do that for myself, because that old paradigm is always running in the background. Okay. So, as somebody who's raised with that paradigm, I have to remember to do that for myself. And that's the trickiest part, is to apply all this. I have to practice what I preach, or I don't feel like I should preach it. I have to, if I'm telling you something that I think is going to be helpful to you, I'm actually saying it to myself at the same time and reminding myself. It's like a repatterning. It's a reprogramming. So my clients, why I'm helping to reprogram them at the same time, because I'm talking, I'm reprogramming myself. So it's happening simultaneously. The best thing is to put a white light around you. For me, that's what worked. I don't know. For each person, it may be different, but I white light if I feel like I'm going into something that may be where I feel like I have to protect myself. I try not to go into that protective place, because that protective place comes from a place of fear. And when I'm dealing with clients, I don't have fear. I never have fear. I have fear with humans that aren't my clients, maybe out there in the world, but when people are coming to you in that way of, opening and being vulnerable, it's really a beautiful thing. And I don't, if something is really hard and I suffer with that person and I cry and I purge it and I just go back to a place of love. Love is the answer to everything. Really, it is, but it's so simple. We forget because we're so complex. I mean, we got the feelings that aren't ours. We got the thoughts that aren't ours. We got this body that's templing the spirit that's really like just a temporary loan, like a vehicle. It's just, yeah, it's a
It's a
lot.
dance. Yeah.
It's a dance. It's a dance. Yeah. And the other day when you helped me by being there for me, it was just a wonderful purging. It was just, it was so helpful. Thank you. I've felt better ever since. We all just need to purge because we're going through that purification process. And, if we can get to a place where we can be honest to each other and say, I want to be able to hear you, but I can't hear you right now because I've got too much of my own negativity I'm working on right now. And there's no room left in here.
Yeah.
But I'll get back to you. I think we need to start getting to be that honest with each other because, the one thing I do have to have good boundaries about in order for me to be there for my clients in that way, I can't be bringing my own negativity into those sessions. And that means I have to have good boundaries around friends and family that can be really negative, and as we all can, and making sure that I'm not carrying any of, if anything, I'm more apt to be influenced or impacted by people that aren't my clients.
I get that. The image again I'm seeing is like, take your shoes off before you enter the temple and make sure your vessel is clean because this is a sacred temple. And
Yes.
to be very cognizant of that and to be able to use our throat chakras to say, hey, I need some boundaries. I'm processing, and to be clear with and be okay. Again, the ego wants to, because especially for anybody listening, you may be a healer, you may hold great space for a lot of people. And sometimes you need to open when you need space held for you.
Yes.
Because we're not meant to do this alone.
Right. Nobody, not even the shamans. And they always lived alone outside of the village. They had to.
Yeah.
And I understand that. I'm living outside of the village now.
And what's happening as the elder, as you are in your elder experience, dealing with the densities? How is being outside the village? What's shifting for you? What are you noticing that's happening, transforming now for you?
I think what's getting clearer for me is that I need to do it's almost like having a silent retreat in my home and give that to myself until I'm in a place where I know that I'm centered, very strong in my centeredness. And why I can be centered, I feel it's more like a center and then it's a roller coaster, then center, roller coaster. I would like to get to a place where I could stay centered. I think everybody would. I'll let you know if and when that happens. Or no, not an if. I'll let you know when that happens.
I like that.
So that is my goal. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Because the roller coaster ride it's hard. It's challenging energetically. It's just depleting and a lot of energy. Whew. So
I want to ask a question about dying without dying, because it seems to me that there are aspects of all of us that have to die away. Belief systems, thoughts, even the language is shifting on how we even identify the experience itself. So for those who are going, because we're in Scorpio season right now in a very potent way, how can we die without dying? How can we allow those aspects of ourselves to transmute, transform, and then rebirth at the same time and still be functional in the world and still have to pay the bills and do the things, you know? There's an adage that says before enlightenment, you chop wood and carry water. And then after enlightenment, you have to chop wood and carry water because it's an ongoing process, right? So during these dense times of transformation, how do you move through that and die and yet still be here?
Well, I'm in that process. And when I've finalized that process, I'll give you a whole set of tools and techniques, but I can tell you all right now, the only thing first is the intention, the willingness, and the consciousness to let go of my attachment to my identity. Because I'm realizing that in order for me not to be reactive, I have to get to that place. The other is to, when I'm aware, and again, it all starts with awareness, everything starts with awareness. But when I'm aware that I'm in fear, and I recognize that fear is not of the truth, it's of the illusion, nothing to fear but fear itself. When I realize that, then I feel at that point it's my responsibility to shift back into the light. Now, if I can do it really quick, I can't. I don't even know. It's kind of like I get so involved in the story. It's almost like reading a really good book. And you're reading that book and you forget all about everything around. And that's what it feels like when the fear is in there and it's taken over and it's caught me off guard and I'm not even conscious enough to be able to say, hey, you're in fear now, shift. I'm buying the fear. I'm buying the whole kit and caboodle. And it's taken over. And I'm like, yeah, and this is going to happen. And how am I going to do that? And then I get into problem solving and I get right up into my head. And then I scare myself to a point where if I haven't caught it, or I mean, at some point I will catch it. But especially if it starts to create real suffering, that's when I really, okay, enough. I've had enough. The suffering does serve a purpose. And it serves a purpose for me in terms of saying, okay, you've reached that point. You've had enough. You need to do something. Now, hopefully I can do that before I go into suffering. That's the idea. That's why I like to catch it as early as possible, because I've heard that the first 17 seconds, if you can turn it around, if you can take fear and alchemize it back into love, think of something loving, think of something that's true. Think of the fact that the creator is pure love and has made you. Something like that. And if you can do something like that, then you can pull yourself out and it's pretty quick and it's pretty easy and you can move on with your day. But if you're not in the now, if you're not conscious, and it creeps in with little thoughts like, you know, you're not going to have enough time to get that done. And if you don't get that done, and then it goes on and on and on. And before you know it, you're down a road and you're overwhelmed, you're frustrated, you know, you can't get it, whatever the story is that you're telling yourself. And then it's work. So the more conscious we can be, the quicker we can move through it and get back to our equilibrium, get back to a place of alchemize the fear to love, because those are the only two reactions we actually have. All feelings, actually fear isn't a feeling, fear is a reaction, and so is love. So or let me put it this way, the feelings are like frustration, anger, bliss, joy, peace. Those are all feelings. But the two emotional reactions that we have are either fear or love. And if you find yourself, like I have been lately, having a lot of fear bubbling up to the surface, of course, I'm in a new place, a new transition. I'm out in the sticks by myself for the first time in my life, doing a whole different thing, like like I said earlier. And I'm just starting to really get more comfortable. Because as humans, of course, as much as we want change, we're not real comfortable with it either. We're suspicious of it. We're afraid of it, even when we want it. So for me, it's the only time, if I'm stuck in the fear, then I have to call a friend to help me out. Or you call a therapist, or you call somebody that is not going to try to fix you, because you're not to be fixed. There's nothing broken. Not one of us is broken. So there's nothing to fix. And we don't need any more heroes. We just need that compassionate connection, so we know we're not going through it alone. Because the dying process, the letting go of the identity, the letting go of all these feelings that come up. I'm getting ready to go to New York to see family. And I woke up with the fear of, hold on 1 second. There we go. All right. Someone keeps calling in and I have to keep switching them off. Here, maybe if I just put the silent mode on, then it won't interfere. There we go. Anyway.
So Carrie, I can't hear you.
Oh, you can't hear me?
There's a disconnect. Okay, sorry.
How about now?
Can you say that again, please?
Can you hear me now? Yes. Can you hear me now? No. Okay. All right. I think that might do it. Are we good? No. We're not good.
Okay.
Yeah.
Try that again, Carrie.
It says my microphone is unmuted, so you should be able to hear me.
There you go. I can hear you.
Okay. There's just a delay. It takes a while after I do something because of the delay where I live. So it seems like it's not working, and then I go to do something else, and all I did was mess up what I did before.
Well, no, I want to go back because you were talking about something important, and I feel like it's relevant that this interruption energy, because you were getting ready to speak on fear, that you're getting ready to head home, and you woke up with fear, and that's why.
Okay, thank you. So I woke up with the fear of, oh my gosh, I'm feeling more stable and better about myself and everything. And, I've been doing my work. So I'm feeling pretty good today. But I woke up this morning. That's how I felt yesterday. I woke up this morning and I went into complete fear about getting triggered at home, because I'm going back to my home, my mother's home, which was my home from the time I was 2 years old. I'm going back to sleep in the same bed that I slept in when I was 2 years old, in the same room. And if that isn't an opportunity to see what comes up, to get triggered, to purge, I don't know what is. And normally I can do it for 4 or 5 days, and that's my older sister's same thing. 4 or 5 days we're good, and then we need to go home. And but I'm going to take a break in between the 10 days, stay at my sister's for a couple of days, and then come back, because it is too challenging. And what scared me was the thought that my intention is to go home and be a light and be the love and be who I truly am, and not lose that, and not react when she can be attacking, or when something comes up that just hurts my feelings or whatever, and not to react. That my intention is to really let go of that identity of the little girl that's reacting to, her mom, and just see that for what it was, something of the past, and not have it come up so intensely. And see, that's my intention, is to really be there in spirit more than in body. But it's going to be both. It has to be both. So,
well, let me ask you, because I know that the holidays, or the holy days, and especially we're coming up on Thanksgiving, where a lot of us are getting ready to return home into that exact scenario, right? Where we're going back into our childhoods, going back to with our familiars, which is our family, the familiar energy of childhood. And if there's unprocessed grief or anger or not being heard, all this can come back up. And so I feel like maybe there's no problem to solve, just an awareness that, hey, you're going to be going retrograde in a way. You're going to be going back in time and space.
Yes.
But come with the tools you have now. Come with the practice of the breath, of grounding, going outside, being in nature, whatever it is that you're using in the now, because you're getting ready to step into familiar territory, which is the family. And all this is going to be coming back.
Which is our greatest challenge.
Yes. And we set it up that way. That's the thing. That's what we have to realize, is we set that up. Our greatest trials and tribulations and our greatest opponent is usually the family that we're born into. So
well, the way that I got myself out of fear was I decided to, again, it's all perception. And I decided, instead of being afraid of all that, that instead my intention is to go there as a witness, to go there and watch it, to go there and see what comes up, with kind of like a place of curiosity. What's going to come up for me? What haven't I dealt with that's still there? What are my bodily cells still holding on to? What are my memories still attached to? Like, to really see it, to dive deep, so I can be freed from whatever is holding me down or holding me back. And that's the work we're all doing. That's the work my clients do. That's the work I'm doing. That's the work you do, is to just be able to allow it to come, but without judgment. There's the challenge. Without judgment. And can I embrace it? Can I take whatever comes up that might not feel good and be really uncomfortable, make me want to get out of my skin, and just hug it? Hug her to death. Hug her
to life.
Hug her to death.
Hug her to life.
Or hug the identity to death, and hug the whatever, but it's really not. I think that it's not so much a matter of, there is a feeling of dying there. It's a feeling of dying. You're letting go of all your attachments to who you think you are, and and what you're attached to. This is really important. This is a value of mine. And so you're willing to fight for your values or your beliefs or whatever. It's just identity. And so I'm starting to realize that whatever's coming up for me, it's just an identity thing. It's not the truth. And when we can, it's not the truth of who we are. It's not the truth of what's happening. It's not the truth of anything. It's just in the story. It's when I remember that I'm empowered. I'm empowered. But when I forget that, I'm a victim to my past. I'm a victim to my future, because I'm certainly not in the now. And then there's the suffering. But it is the suffering that makes me surrender once again and seek reality, or seek the truth. See, I'm a truth seeker. That's what we all are. The old souls, the ancient ones. We're truth seekers. Anybody asks who you are, I'm a truth seeker. I'm a shaman. But if we can get back to the truth, then we get back to our center. It's just the road back, because there's so many temptations and desires along the way that are distracting. And this experience it's not for sissies. I remember when my dad was getting old. He was in his early 80s, I think, and we were walking together, and at one point he said to me, this getting old, it's not for sissies. And back then I heard it and I thought that was really cute, and here I am. It's not for sissies.
Wow. I just want to thank you, first of all, for sharing your medicine, which is you sharing your perspective, your very vulnerable space that you find yourself in. And this is also a testament to show that it doesn't matter who you are or what your title, that we're all going through it, that this is the human process of becoming, of remembering, of dying without dying, of being reborn moment by moment. And it's a moment by moment process. And I want to honor you and thank you for sharing your process with the collective, because there are lots of densities and a lot of dying that's happening right now across the planet in ways that are very, very impactful and very intense. And so this is a very intense energy that we're finding ourselves in. And this is just a great reminder that you brought, that you're not alone, that we have each other. And is there anything that you would like to leave our community with today? Any words of wisdom as you're getting ready to step into your own journey and soothing and perhaps releasing the story of the inner child? Is there anything you'd like to share to leave us with?
Just what people think of us is none of our business. The most important thing we can do is trust inside. Go inside for the answers and be gentle with yourself. Practice compassion. For it took a very courageous being to agree to be here on this planet at this time. It took a very special being. And I'm that being, and you're that being. We're all that being. And if we can honor self with that compassion, it will make it so much easier. That's about it.
Thank you, Carrie, for being the medicine today and for showing up your authentic, beautiful self. I so honor you in this process, and I honor everybody watching or listening to this podcast to know that you're not alone. This is a process, and we are deep in it, everybody. We got this, but we have it. We've got it. We've got each other during this process. So I'm going to, at the bottom of this, put Carrie's information below. If anybody connected with Carrie Trubenbach today and her energy and just want some guidance to seek out and explore. And of course, you can always also reach out to Livzenastrology, and you can find my information at the bottom. And again, thank you everybody for connecting today to this very important, poignant conversation, and just so much gratitude, so much love. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. In honor of you. Namaste, my friend.
Namaste, beauty.